Hey guys! Today we will take a closer look at Noxious from Vult, a crazy phase and frequency modulation based oscillator. Let's start! Okay, so Noxious is a part of the Vult Premium Modules collection, and there are actually two versions of this oscillator, a monophonic one, the one you see here, and a polyphonic one with up to 4 voices. We will start by going through all the different sections and features of the monophonic version, have a quick look at the polyphonic version, and then build a patch from scratch using both versions of the oscillator. And let's start with the oscillator section. We have the tune knob and 3 modes, fine with a range of a semitone up and down, coarse with a range of 1 octave up and down, and semi, again with a range of 1 octave up and down but in steps of semitones. We also have an octave knob for quickly switching between the different octaves, and we also have a switch for setting the oscillator in LFO mode. By using the wave knob, we can fade and morph between 2 different wave shapes by controlling the odd and even harmonics. All the way to the right we have a sawtooth wave, and all the way to the left we have a square wave. Then we have the harmonics knob, which will define the number of harmonics used by the main oscillator, and by turning this knob to the left we will get the same effect as by using a low pass filter, and all the way to the left we will get a sine wave. Let's move on to the FM section. We have a nice big FM amount knob so we can control the amount of frequency modulation. We have also the frequency knob for changing the frequency or pitch of the modulating oscillator, and we have 2 modes, ratio and free, so we can choose if the change in frequency will be in relation to the pitch of the main oscillator, or the change will be separate and without relation. We can also choose between 2 different waveforms of the modulating oscillator, a saw wave and a sine wave. The saw wave will have a somewhat harsher sound, and the sine wave will be less bright. We can also use an external signal to act as the modulator by sending it to the FM input and turning the external FM knob, and the external signal will work together with the built-in modulator. Let's move on to the phase section, where we can control the different phase parameters of the main oscillator. We have the overtone knob, which will apply folding to the phase and by that add also overtones, and we can see this better when closing the harmonics knob. We have also the body knob, which will transform the phase. Then we have the boost knob, which will change the amplitude of the phase, and the feedback knob, which will add positive feedback to the phase, producing a resonating-like sound, and in extreme settings can also result in a square-shaped wave. Now, when changing only one parameter of the phase settings, the results are quite subtle, but when combining them we can get really interesting wave shapes, and again by switching to LFO mode we can also use them in low frequencies, adding interesting movement and motion in the sound. We also have the mix section, where we can mix in a sub-oscillator that can help recover the low end, and we can also mix in white noise, which can be very useful for creating percussive sounds. There is another really nice feature in Noxious, and that is the chaos. Whenever there is a gate coming in the gate input, the different parameters will be randomized, and we have 2 controls, spread and settle. With the spread knob we control the amount of modulation or the amount of change, and with the settle knob we determine the duration in which it takes to the different parameters to go back to their current state, and in this case all the way to the right means that the parameters will stay in a constant state of randomization. Under the mix section we have the glide knob, so we can add portamento, and we have 2 modes to choose from, skip gate, which will disable the glide whenever the incoming gate is high, or always, so the glide will be active all the time. Then we have the volt modulation matrix, so we can modulate up to 6 different parameters by clicking the letter next to the row we want to use and moving the knob / switch we want to modulate, and we can modulate almost anything on the module. So let's have a quick look now at the polyphonic version of Noxious before building a patch. So basically we have the same controls and the same features like the monophonic version, but here we can mix 3 more voices with the main voice, and they will all share the same settings, but each has a separate volt per octave and gate inputs, and it's also possible to tune them differently and control their volume separately. Now, they will not be active as long as nothing is connected to their volt per octave inputs, or until we connect them through their individual outputs. So let's have a look at them on the scope, and you can see that when I start connecting them, the main oscillator's wave shape is changing. Now it's also possible to take them out of the mix and use their individual outputs only, and they all have their own gate inputs, so the chaos function will be triggered independently from the main oscillator. Okay, so let's start building a patch using both versions of Noxious and listen to how they sound like. Okay, so let's start by programming a sequence, and I will use for this stages from Mutable Instruments or the segment generator from Audible Instruments. Let's change all the steps to sequence mode, the yellow mode. Let's take the glide times all the way down. Just like this. If you want to know more about stages, I will put a link in the description to a tutorial video I made about this beautiful module. Now let's change also the different steps. So let's say step number 1 will be all the way down, number 3 also, and number 5 also, something like this. Now each step will output up to positive 8 volts, which are 8 octaves, so we will want to use some sort of attenuation in this case, and we will use a VCA from the fundamental modules. Let's use a multiplied clock to run the sequence. Every clock multiplied by 2, this will go to the gate input of the first step. And let's send this sequence to the VCA, lower its range a bit, something like this maybe. And we will also use Quantum from ML to quantize this signal. Let's use D, F, G, and B flat. Now let's send the signal through Quantum to the oscillator and see what we've got. You can change the sound a bit. Let's make this in the middle, something like this. Okay, let's take the octaves a bit up. You can see that when I close the harmonics knob, it sounds exactly like a low-pass filter. Very nice. Let's leave it somewhere here, a bit more overtones maybe. Just a bit, maybe a FM, sine wave. We can add some sub-oscillator. Okay, very nice. Now I will also want to change the sequence over time, so let's use a sample and hold module to do this for us, and I will use Brains from the Geodesics collection. Of course, we'll change this to the dark matter. Now I will use the lower part of Brains and change its range with this button here. So now the lower right part will output a range of 0 to positive 2 volts. And let's drive this sample and hold with a slower clock, every clock divided by 4. So the change in the sequence will not happen too often. And let's send 3 outputs to 3 steps of the sequence. I will use the pink noise here to modulate the second step. This is the CV inputs of the steps. I will use the red noise to modulate the fourth, and the blue noise to modulate the last step of the sequence. So now the sequence is changing over time. Now I also want to use the chaos function, so let's send the gate from Quantum to the oscillator, to the gate input of the oscillator, and let's add some chaos just a bit. Again, this will control the time it takes for the modulation to go back to 0. This is the amount. So you can hear now the sound is a bit more percussive. But just a bit I want it. Okay, now I also want to modulate some of its parameters, so let's use the 8FO from Bogue Audio. Very nice, let's set it to slow and lower the frequency a bit. Let's push also the offset all the way up so we get a unipolar signal. Now this LFO will output 8 different phases of the same wave, so we can use so we can modulate a lot of stuff with it. Let's use the first output to modulate a few parameters, so let's use a mult also. The mult is also from Bogue Audio. And let's see, let's start. Let's use the first output, send it to the mult. And let's first modulate the harmonics amount. So again, I will send it to the modulation matrix, click the button that I want to use, move the knob a bit. Now it's set here, it's assigned, and now I can open the attenuverter as much as I like. Something like this maybe. Let's modulate also the overtones. The overtones I will want them to close. So again, I just move the knob and I will turn the attenuverter to the other side so it will close this knob. Let's also modulate the FM amount. Move the knob a bit and close it also. Let's modulate also the body in the phase section. This mult, let me also show the cables already. This mult, both sections of the mult are normal to one another, which means that if I don't connect anything to this input here, we will get more copies of the original signal. So we just have more copies here. So let's modulate the body now. This here, turn it a bit to the left, open the attenuverter, and let's modulate also the boost. Again, click the button, move the knob, open the attenuverter, really easy. And let's also modulate the wave shape. Let's see, let's assign this. Make it somewhere here, open the attenuverter. Very nice. Okay, now let me just turn this down a bit, and let's also spread it in the stereo field, and we will use Booty Shifter from Squinky Labs to do this. This module will take the signal and shift its frequency up and down, so its frequencies will boost and cancel one another, what will add movement and motion. So let's send the oscillator first through shifter. I will take it out of the mixer through the input of shifter, and then let's connect this to the mixer and pan 2 channels to the left and to the right, and let's see how this sounds like. And we will raise the shift amount somewhere here maybe. Let's see, let's connect directly from the oscillator. So this is the original, and this is after the shifter. It's a bit wider, more movement, and now we have a nice moving sequence. Okay, so now we have a nice moving sequence, and let's use also the polyphonic version of the oscillator. So let's see. Let's edit. Very nice. This time I will want to create a sort of a pad voice utilizing the other voices. So let's first create a very simple sequence by using constants from ML and also the fundamental sequential switch. Now constants will output a constant voltage in steps of semitones, and we will use the sequential switch as our sequencer, so let's use only 2 steps and send the positive 7 semitones to the second step. So each time the switch will hit its second step, the pitch of the oscillator will go up by 7 semitones. Now we will use a much slower clock to run the sequence, so let's use a clock divided by 16. And I will use actually another mult, because I will want to send this voltage to the other voices as well. And let's send it first to the main oscillator, so from the switch to the mult, and then to the first oscillator's volt per octave input. Now we also have actually to tune this oscillator. Let's use Hotuna. We have to tune it because of the scale we are using. This is tuned to C, but we are using a D minor scale sort of. So let's tune the oscillator. Let's take the pitch information out, change this to coarse, or semitones actually, it's better, and take it up to semitones to D. Very nice, we can get rid of Hotuna. And let's send the pitch information again to the volt per octave input of the oscillator. Okay, now let's have a listen. I will connect this. Let me mute just the first voice. I will connect this to the mixer. Okay, let's take this up a few octaves, maybe somewhere here. Okay, and again, until we will not connect them, the other voices, to something or send voltage to their volt per octave inputs, they will not be active. So let's first turn the volume down of the first 2 extra voices. And let's raise the first one by 1 octave and lower the second one by 1 octave. And let's send the pitch information from the mult also to their volt per octave inputs. So now they are active, they are alive, and let's introduce them to the mix. So we'll take the level up. You can hear it. Very nice. So we have a nice big fat sound. And let's add some movement by modulating the harmonics. Again, I will use the 8FO to the modulation matrix. Choose the harmonics. Let's close them a bit. Something like this. Very nice. Now let's also modulate the wave shape. This maybe. Let's add also some FM. Again, sine wave. Somewhere here. Okay, now let's add some more reverb. I will use the reverb from RCM, it's called the G-verb. And let's disconnect this from the mixer. And I will first turn the levels of the oscillators down, because I will want to use them separately from the main oscillator. And let's send the main oscillator and the one that's tuned an octave higher to the reverb. So this is the main oscillator, this is tuned 1 octave higher, goes also to the reverb. And let's send the third oscillator directly to the mixer. This is the one that is tuned an octave lower. This will be in the middle. Very nice. Let's connect the reverb also to the mixer, to 2 channels that are panned hard left and hard right. This is a big fat sound. Let's change the settings of the reverb a bit. Add some more time, some more size. Very cool. A bit more mix maybe. Let's have a listen to everything together. Yes. Yes. Very nice. Okay, let's add also some percussive sounds. Let me just mute those voices. And for this we will use again the polyphonic version of the oscillator. Let's use for this the Turing machine. And I want to drive the Turing machine with the faster clock, so let's add the clock multiplier. This one is from the Clear Factory. It's a free module. Let's just make something like this. And let's multiply the main clock by 4. This will go to the input of the multiplier, and let's take this to 4. And we will use this to run the Turing machine. Now let's duplicate Quantum, the one we have here. And in this case, because we have again multiple voices, we can use also the shift register. Also from ML, we can use it to sample the signal coming from Quantum and shift it through its 8 outputs, so we will get different pitches for all 4 voices. Let's send the Turing machine to Quantum, from Quantum to the shift register. We will also use the trigger output of Quantum to trigger the shift register. It's already running. And from there we will send the signal to all 4 voices. So this is the main oscillator, the first extra voice, the second one, and the third one. So we have 4 voices all in all. Now I will want to use them independently, so let's lower the volume of the extra voices so they will not be mixed together with the main oscillator. And I will also want them to be nice and percussive, so let's use Spank. I will use 4 actually, also Volt. Spank has a really nice and snappy envelope and a built-in VCA section, so we will send all voices to the Spank modules. I will need 4 of them. And now we can send the oscillators to the VCA section of Spank. Very nice. Now let's change the envelope also to hard, so it's even snappier. Lower also the decay time a bit, something like this maybe. And let's trigger them with different trigger outputs of the Turing machine. So let's use trigger number 1 to voice number 1. Then let's jump 1 and go to 3. Then again 5 and 7. And also trigger the different voices with the same triggers. So voice number 1, the main oscillator will be triggered by the first trigger output. And let's see, the second one will be coming out of the third trigger output. We will use the same triggers that we used for the Spank modules. So each time the different Spank modules are being triggered, there will be also a change in the sound of the different voices from the chaos function. And actually, before we add some chaos, let's listen to how this sounds like. So we will want to mix the voices, and we will use the 4-channel mixer from Bog Audio. Let's send the voices to the mixer from the VCA section of Spank. Let's pan them also a bit, so hard left, hard right, a bit to the left, a bit to the right. Let's lower the volume also. Very nice. And let's send this to the main mixer. See how this sounds like. Very nice, very percussive. And let's start adding some chaos. So let's see, a bit more spread. Now I wanted the modulation, that the randomization will always be on, so I will take this all the way to the right. Very nice, let's see, let's add some noise. Change the wave shape, maybe take it an octave up, some overtones, FM, some feedback. Oh yeah. Okay, now we can make this a bit more interesting. Let's first of all, let's listen to all of this together. Yes. Okay, now we can make this percussive sound or the percussive sounds a bit more interesting by adding a plateau from Valley. Let's do this. Very nice. Now let's set this to tuned mode. Let's take the diffusion input out also. Now the reverb in tuned mode, it will be tuned to musical notes, and this will cause the sound to be a bit more live sounding, so something like this. So let's send the mixer first to the reverb of all of our percussive sounds, and from there to the mixer. Very nice. So we can modulate the size of the reverb. And let's do this actually with the volts section of the Turing machine. So I will send this to the size input and open the attenuator all the way up. Let's change the voltage amount. Maybe a bit more decay. Yeah. Let's see how this sounds like together with all the other voices. Very nice. Now, we didn't use Noxious as an LFO, but this I will leave for you to explore. But there is one more thing I wanted to show you. Let's add another monophonic oscillator. Noxious. Okay. Now, a really nice feature of this oscillator is that when randomizing its values in the right-click menu or by clicking Ctrl R, the basic tuning of the oscillator will not change. Have a look. Everything jumped. I will make it again. Ctrl R. You can see the tuning stays where it is. So we can create random sounds, but staying in tune. And it will also not change, it will not affect the LFO mode. You see this is also staying as it is. It will also not add noise and also not add glide. But everything else is being randomized. This is also a really nice feature. Okay, and that was it, guys. Again, both versions of Noxious are available in the premium collection of Vult with other cool modules. There will be a link in the description to this patch. You can download it and have a closer look. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit the like button. If you want to see more videos like this, please subscribe and hit the bell. And have a good one.